All right, what's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday to everybody. My name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast, and I am super excited for our guest today. And I'm going to introduce him right now. His name is J.M. Ryerson, who's an international speaker, mindset, and business coach. He's the host of Let's Go Win podcast and the best-selling author of Let's Go Win, The Keys of Living Your Best Life, and champions Daily Playbook. He helps high-performing leaders define and execute their individual leadership styles in order to grow the impact and profits of their businesses. His passion is to help others succeed at work, at home, and in life by offering simple tools that provide a work-life balance. Jim, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Brother, thank you for having me. I'm fired up. It's not every day I get to speak with the master, so that video got me all fired up, man. You're flying around.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I get fired up every time I watch the video because I just love being in that ring. That's one of my favorite things. And being out on that Spartan course, some of my favorite stuff. But guys, I got to let you know, I got a copy of this book right here. Let's Go Win. And I don't know who referred me to read this book because I'm always asking for recommendations on different books to read. Someone put it out there. It may have been from our Connected Leaders Academy group. But I picked up this book. I read the book, loved the book, and I got to the back of the book and I'm like, well, I'm going to message the author and just see if we can get an interview in and talk about what it took to write this book. What were some of the thoughts going through his mind as he was writing this and other things. And you know what? I have to say, as I told JM before, I've asked a lot of people for interviews, celebrities, authors, actors, and some I get turned down, some I get a yes, and then I get ghosted. But this guy's a real deal because I asked him, he said yes, and here we are. We're doing the show. So thanks again, JM. Appreciate you for that.
Truly my pleasure, brother. I'm just fired up. So glad you got a chance to read it, and thank you to whoever referred it over to you. I appreciate that.
Well, let's jump right in and talk about the book right out of the gate. Now, this book was written just within the last few years. Is that correct?
Yeah, it actually published in February of 2020. So if you look back, just about a month before the world shut down. So it was pretty fascinating timing. But you know what's so interesting, Jason? When I wrote the book, I have two boys. My wife and I have two sons, 16 and 13 now. But the whole idea was to write a book to give them the chance to maybe not scrape their knee as many times as I did growing up. And that's why I started it. And a gal that was working with me is like, man, you're selfish. And I said, what are you talking about? I don't feel like I'm selfish. She said, if you only share this with two human beings, you're selfish. And I was like, all right, cool. That makes sense. So we published it. And I got to tell you, man, it was really a cool experience to be able to brain dump all that stuff and then to have somebody say, hey, this really helped me with courage, or this helped me with mindset. It's a really rewarding feeling to help someone else from, whether it's a past experience that you've had or your mentors or your, authors you've read, or in this case, my grandparents or parents, these lessons. So I don't know, man, it was just a cool experience. And it's just led to so many amazing things like talking to you today.
Yeah, no, and you talked about the world shutting down in 2020. Of course, we're talking about how COVID hit the United States and hit it different in every state, a little bit different, right? And so that's actually how this podcast came to be about. Is I'm sitting at home going, well, my martial arts school is limited. We did most of our classes online. We were able to do some things outside. It was just, a lot of things going on. We kept going, but I found myself wanting to do more and to reach out more. And so, like, I took the opportunity. I said, I don't know anything about podcasting. I don't know anything about videos or any of that stuff, but I just jumped on, used StreamYard, interviewed a lot of martial artists, a lot of leaders, now authors, coaches along the way to tell their story because, everybody has a story. And like that person said to you, right? You would be selfish to keep this book and all these thoughts to yourself. So why not share other people's story and at the same time share a little bit about myself along the way? I have two young kids as well. Well, they're not kids now. They're 20 and 17, but they're still kids to me. They're still my babies. And I thought, and I'm sure you think this about your book and when you wrote it, thinking of your boys, that like what a great legacy piece to have them read later or to watch later and to learn not only about you but your experience and your experience with others. So had you written anything prior to this?
Not formally, brother. I mean, honestly, there's so much that you could talk about with the imposter syndrome because I had it. Like, why am I writing a book? Who am I to write a book? There's a lot of where I didn't write it because when's the right time to write the book? And the truth is, there's never a perfect time to do any of it. Just do it, man. Just get it on. And are there things that have changed? And would I change this sentence here and that? Yeah, of course. You
Hmm.
evolve and you shift. But at that moment in my life, it's what I was feeling. I really wanted to pass that down. And it's interesting, brother. I lost my dad in March of this year, and there's so many questions I want to ask him right now that I can't. And
Hmm.
so to your point with leaving a legacy, my hope is that if nothing else, my kids can look back and say, "Oh, this is what dad thought when it came to, having fun or when it came to transcending limiting beliefs." So they now have that piece with them no matter what. And the
Hmm.
cooler part is they also have so many lessons from my dad because so much of that was poured into that book. So if anybody's sitting there going, I want to write a book, just do it, because it started by my 8-year-old or 7-year-old at the time said, "Hey dad, how's the book going?" Because he saw my goal for 3 years, write the book for the
Hmm.
kids. And I had to look him in the face, man, and say, "Trey, I have like the first part of chapter 1 done." And he destroyed me and inspired me all that moment. And it was done 6 months later. So just go for it.
Well, and isn't that amazing how our kids have that impact on us? We look at our parents and go, "Gosh, they made such an impact. I learned so much from them." But as I grow older and more mature, and my kids are now becoming adults, I've learned so much, and I try to say it as often as possible that I learned so much from my kids. My kids are such great teachers for me, and how impactful that was for you, for your son to kind of rip you apart at one end, but inspire you and push you forward in another. And I think that that's a great attribute of a parent that is willing to put themselves out there and show the way so that they can go the way, right? So tell me a little bit more about your dad. It sounds like your dad was an inspiration in your life, maybe an inspiration towards some of the thoughts and the what went into this book. Can you tell us a little bit more about him?
Yeah, man. I mean, I have two of the most incredible parents growing up. You can't ask for more amazing, supportive parents that really let me be me and do some wild and crazy things and make all these mistakes. And they were always there and always supportive, even when I scared the living daylights out of them. They were like, "All right, he'll be okay." It's obviously it's hard losing my dad. It was unexpected, and it's been a struggle, and it probably will be for many, many years to come.
Hmm.
But I have fond memories of so many life lessons from my dad, from both my parents. But my dad and I grew up fly fishing in Montana, all over, and there's so many crazy stories that I cherish now that at the time, God, it was horrible. I was freezing my ass off, and we're catching fish, and it's like I can't feel my fingers. And here's my old man, like, hey, that old man strength. It doesn't even bother him.
Right.
So he was a hero to me in so many ways. I looked up to him in so many ways, and as you said before, it was interesting to see the shift where he would learn things from me, and I see it with my kids. Like my oldest, I learned hard work and so many amazing things from him, and my youngest, I learned how to love unconditionally and just how to just be the kind of soul you can be. Is And so
Hmm.
it was just amazing to watch as we evolve and shift and change how we can learn from both sides, my dad to my kids. And so yeah, man, I miss him, but he was a great man, and definitely left a lasting impact on myself and my kids as well.
Yeah. Well, tell us more about your mom.
My mom was a teacher for 39 years, man, and
Yes.
she's one of those teachers. Now, I never had her as a student, but I talked to so many of her former students that say, Mrs. Ryerson did X. And they talk about her like, 30 years later. And
Hmm.
and you just think as a kindergarten and first grade teacher to have that much impact, it's really, really unique. And she's just she is an amazing woman. She is a really tough lady because she's gone through hell and back this year, and she just keeps rising. I look up to her in so many ways because although I have fond memories of my dad, and the things we did, to a large degree, my dad was gone, and my mom raised three kids to a
Hmm.
degree on her own. So, you know, it's just amazing parents, brother. I have nothing but fond memories of both, and I'm very blessed.
That's great. Well, you talked about your mom being a teacher for 39 years and the impact that she can have. I mean, I can remember for sure. It was later in my life, but I had a high school teacher that I often talk about. That man, if it wasn't for him, and this is my wood shop teacher, by the way, my wood shop, my cabinet making, my carpentry. Like I grew up, my dad was a builder, so I love to be around wood and building. But I just happened to meet this teacher, and he kind of took me in and had such an impact on my life because if it wasn't I think if it wasn't for him I would have never graduated high school. I hated school. I did not want to be at school for whatever reason, but when I met this man, Randy Porter, just changed my life completely as far as like the trajectory of graduating high school and moving on to, I used to talk about owning a martial arts school in woodshop and be like, kind of tease it, but he would kind of push it, hey, how you doing on that? You still training, still teaching. But my whole point in telling that story is that teachers have an impact. Our parents have that impact, and it's these stories and these lessons that we pass on to our children and our children's children. And just, for me being a teacher and a coach, I can pass this on to those that I work with. Sounds like you had, amazing parents and an amazing childhood growing up. You said you lived in Montana. Now, did you live there like your whole life growing up?
Pretty much from 8 to 22. Outside, I studied abroad for I guess 10 months of that time. But yeah, man, I grew up. That was that's home. It'll always be. Even I was in California for 20 years. I've been in Florida for two. And you know what, Montana? I'm looking at a picture right above me. It still is home, brother. That's where my heart has kind of always been. So yeah, it's Great Falls is where I grew up. Went to school in Missoula, and so many of those rivers, the mountains. I mean, that was my playground, and I'm extremely biased. I will say I love Montana, and I talk very, very warmly about it, probably to the chagrin of my wife sometimes. But yeah, man, it's a really cool place to grow up.
And while you were in Montana and you were going to school, did you play sports? Were you into team sports, individual sports? What kind of activities were kind of your thing?
If there was a sport I was playing it, man, I mean, literally football, baseball, basketball, soccer, swimming. So I played team and individual sports. Now, what's fascinating about that, I ended up playing basketball in college, but here's the caveat to that. And this is one of those conversations I'll never forget with my dad. I had a full ride to pretty much any Pac 10 at the time school. Now it's Pac 12, but to go swim. Or I had this really small school in Eastern Montana that was basically going to pay for my books to play basketball. And I chose basketball. Now, I look at that as a parent today. If my child were to come to me, full ride to these amazing schools, or go to this little junior college in Eastern Montana to play basketball and get very little funding, that's not like, oh, great idea, JM. So it wasn't met with like, oh, this is an amazing, but you know what? They let me do it, man. They were like, go follow your dreams. And it's one of the best decisions I could have made because I love team. I love teamwork. That's what I do still today is I work with teams and companies. And so there's so many great lessons. But yeah, to answer your question, man, I grew up playing every sport. I love sports. I'm passionate about it. And it's so much fun now to watch my kids compete in their various sports. So it's just a huge part of my DNA and what I do.
Yeah, I think it's really refreshing to hear that your parents supported you in that decision, even though it may not have been, let's just say, the best decision, but it was the best decision for you. Because we live in a society now where, and I'm going through this because my daughter's in her third year in college. My son is getting ready. He's going to graduate high school in 2023, and we're having those discussions about college and where he wants to go to school. And there's a lot of parents that will kind of decide for you and basically tell you where you're going to go to school and what you're going to do and what you're going to major in. And then there's some that are going to just let the kids make the decision on their own. And then there's kind of somewhere in between. And that's kind of where I'm falling right now, because we have some goals and we have some things in mind that would be good for him, but at the end of the day, he's the one that's got to go through it. He's got to be the one that's got to have the passion. He's got to be the one to do the work and so it's kind of hard like this time, and my daughter was real easy. She went to a junior college, transferred over to a Cal State school. She's doing great. She's loving it. She actually never even stepped foot on a college campus during her junior college years because COVID. So everything online, and she kind of likes it. It works for her. She likes being online because she works pretty much full time. But for him, it's like you want to steer him in the right direction, but you don't want to force him in that direction. And so going back, your parents gave you that freedom and that support at the same time, because at the end of the day, we always want our kids to be happy and give them as much opportunity as possible. And it sounds like you had all the opportunity in the world, and you had the support to back it up to do what you wanted to do.
Yeah, man. And we talk about this all the time because my son is a junior now and he's a really good tennis player. He will play in college and he'll probably play in the pros if he, knock on wood, stays healthy. But,
Mm-hmm.
So often you want it for your kids because, again, I learn hard work from my oldest. No one works harder at tennis than this kid. He loves the game.
Mm-hmm.
But when he doesn't, like today, he had a bad loss because he's at a college showcase literally today. And it's easy to get down and be like, what's going on? But the truth is it's his journey, man. And it's going to all work out the way it's supposed to. It's not easy because as a parent, you want to put the bumpers up so that the ball doesn't go in the gutter. But look, it's strikes and gutters. That's life. So you learn from the wins. You certainly learn probably even more from the losses. And that's what I told my son. I was like, hey, man, you didn't perform. That's okay. Get back up and do it again, because that is the key to not only sports, that's the key to life. You're going to get knocked down. I promise you. I don't care how big, tough, strong you are. You're going to get knocked on your butt. How many times are you going to get back up? Because the guy that stays on the ground, that's the one that loses. But if you keep getting up, it'll all work out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tell me about some of your stumbling blocks as in your childhood or in your high school, college years. What are some things that you were challenged with that made you stumble a bit?
Brother, we're talking about sports, so that's one of the most defining moments. I had so much of who I was and my identity wrapped up into being an athlete and in a pretty good one. And I had my first knee surgery my freshman year of high school, and that totally derailed me playing basketball that year. And that was, again, my passion. Well, got back up, did it again. And then my junior year, like I think it was the fourth game, best game of my high school career, had colleges looking at me, blow out my knee again. And I was just like so defeated. And I remember just like thinking, why me? I remember this very clearly. Got back up, just ended up playing ball in college, blew it out again after my freshman year. And I remember these moments where it's like, I wanted to play the victim. I wanted to be so angry at the world. But the truth is, look, that's going to happen. And it just took me on a different path. Apparently, this wasn't what was supposed to be. So those are some of the most challenging and trying times because, look, so much of who I was the accolades and the love and all that you get as a star athlete. But when you get knocked down, it's amazing how quick you get forgotten about and replaced. And as a young teenager, that was hard to not wait. You're not looking at me anymore. You don't want to give me a full ride. I need to go work and hopefully some small junior college, which, by the way, Don Mass, my coach, you talked about your woodshop teacher, Don Mass as a basketball coach literally gave me opportunities that I don't have time to provide today, but I will always remember that man and what he did for me. So those were some trying times, brother, but I'm so glad I went through it because I went through those experiences and I can help guide my kids if they go through them. And
Hmm.
B, it helped me toughen up. Look, you're going to get knocked down, get back up, do it again. And so it's helped me in business and relationships and everything. Even though it sucked at the time, it ended up being a really good thing.
Well, and what helped you get? I mean, was there anything specific? Was it your own drive? Was it your parents' support? Was it a mentor or a coach that continued to drive you and believe in you? What was it that got you through those struggles in those times?
I love this question because I think we all need to ask this question. For me, if you tell me you can't do something, that's exactly what I'm going to go do. So I had a college, or excuse me, my high school basketball coach said, "You'll never play for me again. That knee is shredded." And I was like, blank you, I'm absolutely getting back up. You will see me on the court. And I did. I ended up starting that whole year. I remember my dad telling me, "You can't do this," as I got into certain a career. And I was like, you know what, Dad? That's exactly what I'm going to go do. So for me, I'm inspired when somebody says, "You can't do this." So whether it's the podcast or writing a book, I don't know why that drives me, but I just don't like being told what I can't do. And
Hmm.
so that's really what did drive me. And then the other thing, brother, I it's the camaraderie, being around human beings that have this like mind. There's nothing better in my opinion when you get to be around people that want something like you do in a team. And I remember watching my teammates from my hospital and just going, "Hell no, man. I'm getting back up. I'm going to be with those guys." I remember all those times and I didn't want to miss out on it.
Hmm. Now, were you born with that mindset? Was that mindset acquired over time? Was that, because like I know a lot of people with that very same mindset. I have that mindset. You tell me I can't do it, F you. I am doing it. I'm going all the way, and I'm going to cram it down your throat. Uh, silence them with your success. And so, what were you born with that? Where did that come from? That whole drive.
It's a fascinating question, and it's a whole nature versus nurture. If you were to ask my mom today, she would say JM was not never the most gifted, but he worked harder than anyone else. That's I mean, I've heard her say it a million times because I wasn't. My sister was an incredible athlete, and things kind of seemed to come natural to her. My younger brother, again, extremely smart, and that seemed to come natural. I was that middle child that, it didn't come easy or natural, but I was willing to keep working at it. So, it's funny because when I watch my own kids, I see these things. Like TJ,
Hmm.
my oldest, is not the most gifted, but he works harder. Trey, my youngest, is extremely talented, but the work ethic doesn't quite match up. So I think there's a little bit to that because you see that common. And when you see these legendary athletes, they both have the gifts and they work really hard. And so I think a lot of that was God given. Like, hey, man, if you want it, you're going to have to go get it. But I don't know. I just have always wanted to do more. I'm passionate about helping others, being a part of something. So I think it was God given, but maybe I something early in life I don't remember. But my mom and she'll tell you today that's just kind of how I was wired.
Now, do you ever struggle or deal with people where they might think that this is, an obsessive trait? Is that, you know what I mean? When do you stop? When do you quit? When do you give up? I mean, like the answer is never for all of those things. But do you ever find people looking at you like, dude, simmer down?
My wife, on a She she says I'm an extremist at anything, and it drives her absolutely nuts. So for instance, when it comes to food, I'm an extremist where I want to continue to get better. I believe that I can be 90 years old and just as active as I am today at 40. I don't feel much different today at 44 than I did at 21. That's my mindset. And she's
Hmm.
like, "Hey, grow up." And I'm like, I don't really feel that I need to. So yeah, man, it can be frustrating for our significant others and family members. But you know what I love about her is she's accepted who I am, and she's like, there's a lot of good that comes with it. It drives me crazy, but
Right.
you do some good things with it.
Well, that was kind of a loaded question too for me because when you said your wife, I laughed out loud because literally my wife is the exact same way. I mean, if you see my opening video, right? I'm out there at professional wrestling. I started at 38 years old, and like you, I don't feel in my mind a whole lot different than when I was 21. I will tell you that my body feels a lot different the next day. But like, and you talk about being an extremist, like I'm either all in or I'm just not in at all. Like with just about everything, and it's hard for people to understand that mindset. And it's so funny you explained my kids in the same way that I would explain. One's got a lot of talent, right? But doesn't really want to work all that hard. And then one's got, just the opposite. It's just amazing how it works that way. I was probably like you a little bit in the way that I didn't have a lot of physical talent, but I knew how to work hard because my dad was in construction, and like we grew up on the construction site, like digging ditches, carrying lumber, doing all the rough, tough stuff. It just in 12 hours a day, no big deal. Like my brother to this day still works construction. He'll work a 12, 14-hour day, and that's just normal to him. So work is never scary. But the talent comes a little bit slower for me, or the skill comes a little bit slower for me. But let's talk back about some of these other books. The keys to living your best life, Champions Daily Playbook. Um, how did those come about? When did you start those? How did you transcend some of the information from Let's Go Win towards these books as well?
So Champions Daily Playbook is 100%. It's just how I coach people. And I kept going through and regurgitating the same stuff. And I'm like, why wouldn't I just put it in a book and hand it to them? Now my life becomes a lot easier. And it
Mm-hmm.
also, the idea was to make it more scalable because I believe in abundance, man. I'm not trying to not share information that's been extremely helpful to myself, to my
Mm-hmm.
clients, whether it's executives in business or pro athletes. And so I decided with Champions Daily Playbook is let's just put it down and let's put it out there. Once I
Mm-hmm.
had published the first book, it just became easier to say, you know what a cool experience when somebody calls you and says thank you. That just, it's an amazing feeling. And so with Champions Daily Playbook, I was like, look, let's just put it all down. And if you follow this for 90 days, you will accomplish whatever goal you put and set forth at that 90 days. And all it is really creating simple habits.
Mm-hmm.
And it is simple, but it's not easy because typically people choose out after a few days. They get real excited and then they're like, something happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole trick to really succeeding in anything is
Mm-hmm.
putting in that work, putting in that grind, continuing to reestablish those habits day after day after day until now it's just a part of your lifestyle. And so
Right.
that's what Champions Daily Playbook is all about. And, honestly, that in my opinion, it's a much simpler read. It's only 11 pages of text. And then it's basically a journal that you do for 90 days, but
Mm-hmm.
it's very impactful and it's helped a lot of people. It's helped people lose 80 pounds in 6 months. It helped, pro golfer make a bunch of cuts after missing a bunch in a row. So it's the simple thing, but if you use it, it's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking, um, good habits are hard to make but easy to live with, right? Bad
Mm.
habits are easy to make, but hard to live with. So it's those habits. You're talking about habits, daily habits. And so you also wrote the other book, The Keys to Living Your Best Life. Talk about that book and talk about the topic of work-life balance, because we hear that a lot. And I'm not always convinced that there is a true work-life balance, especially with an extremist like myself. But talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the keys to living your best life, just I'd hate to correct you, but it's just the latter part of Let's Go Win. So that's
Oh,
part of the
okay.
first book. But with your work life balance question, it's such a fascinating question because I have had people come at me and they're like, man, balance doesn't exist. Harmony does. And I'm like, I could go with that, man. Work life harmony. I could go with that. And really, the whole idea is when you let something get way out of whack.
Hmm.
So, for instance, and I'm speaking from experience because my life wasn't ideal when I was way out of balance. And so when my business was crushing, I mean, in my mid 20s, I'm making seven figures. Things are great, or are they? Because my relationship is in tatters. I'm about to lose my marriage. I'm super unhealthy and overweight at that time, and I'm not happy. But I'm making all this money and I'm growing this business and everything's cool, right?
Hmm.
And so when I talk about work-life balance, it's really just making sure that you're checking in on what's most important to you. And if you were to ask me, what's most important to me is my family. I talk about them openly very often because that's first in front of my mind. But I didn't prioritize them at that time. I put business one, two, three, four, and five. Maybe the family came six, maybe. And so what I talk about with my clients now is work-life balance starts with taking care of you first and taking care of your mind, your body, and your soul. That's the first thing every single day, whether it's for 10 minutes or it's for 2 hours. I really don't care, but
Mm.
making sure that you're checking in on those three areas. If you do that, now you get to show up as the best version of you as a spouse, as a father, as an employee, as an employer, whatever hat you're wearing. If you check in on you first, now we can really seek some work-life balance. But typically we get way out of whack because, man, I'm going to go crush it in business and I'm going to, everything's going to be great. I have so many clients when I first meet them, they're unhealthy, they're extremely wealthy in terms of financially, but they're not going to live very long to see it. And it's like, man, that is not how you want to go through life. So when I talk work-life balance, that's really what I'm talking about.
Hmm. Yeah, so I just spoke with someone actually yesterday. Did an interview with a very successful attorney. Right, he had a law practice for I think it was 29 or maybe it was 39 years. It was a long time, and he pretty much said exactly what you just said. Is that he was making good money. He had a great living. Um, but he was unhealthy. He was overweight. He did not see his wife or his kids as much as he would like to, and it was actually a health and wellness program that changed his life, and he became a health coach. So Rick Cademan, I was talking to him yesterday, and we hear this a lot, and I can remember a time definitely in my life because for me, family comes first, always has, always will, and so for me, I thought that if I work harder and I make more money and the business is successful, I can take care of my family better. So that's how I justified it. I remember, and my wife will tease me a little bit, I went to work like the day my son was born.
Mm.
Like I went that day or that night or the next day, right? And my wife will still give me a little she'll poke me with that one every once in a while. And you know what? And I need to be reminded of that because I don't want that again. I don't want that to where I think that work was so important. And really it wasn't making the change. It wasn't doing what I really needed it to do. It was just I had to kind of shift that mindset. And I think a lot of people might get stuck in that very same thing that they say families first, but then they're working so hard because they want to provide for the family that things get out of whack. And you're speaking my language when you talk about mind, body, soul, mind, body, spirit. I mean, that's the martial arts lifestyle. I mean, we talk about that, all the time. So I love what you're saying. I love everything so far. And guys, if you are watching right now and you're watching this live, I hope you're enjoying this. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments so we can ask JM. He'll be happy to answer anything, and I'll be happy to fill in as well. But please comment and let us know. But Jam, you've done the books, you've done the sports, you've done a lot of stuff, speaking and podcasting. So let's talk about becoming an international speaker and becoming a podcast host.
So, like you, I chose during the pandemic because I wasn't traveling as every other week was kind of the schedule at that time. And I'm looking at my wife and I'm like, man, there's something more here. I've heard about podcasts. I'd done a couple as a guest,
Hmm.
and I fell into what is now my biggest passion. What we're doing right now is literally my favorite thing to do work-wise. There will be a day when all I do is podcasts as a guest, podcasts as a host, because you meet fascinating people. And like you said, you get to share their stories. So I absolutely love this because there's so much amazing knowledge that's being shared. Your podcast, I was listening to Simon Sinek's podcast this morning. There's just so much great things and greatness to be shared. It's the opposite of the news, right? It's like
Mhm.
you can pick and choose to be inspired today. It's right there. It's literally on your iPhone. You look up Apple Podcast, boom, Spotify, boom, it's there. And so I have just found something that I'm truly passionate about. I I really, really enjoy it. The speaking part, it's funny, man, because my wife likes when I go and do the signature talks or the keynotes. That's not typically my favorite because I like give and take. I like to,
Mm. Mhm.
put something out there and then we have a conversation on, just like you and I are doing. So I do both. I do the keynotes and that's cool. But you know what I love is afterwards when I get to really communicate with the group and they're like, what about this? And well, this is my experience. What
Mhm.
about this for you? And you get to share and really communicate and relate with another human being. So I enjoy it, man. It's just something that I never really expected to do. But now that I've found it, it's never going away.
Yeah, yeah. No, I again, I agree with you and feel what you're saying because I spent 10 years as a martial arts business consultant with a large company, and I love to speak, but I loved it more when it was interactive. Getting up there and spouting whatever I have to say, like. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I have ADD and I can't sit and listen to someone for 45 minutes straight. Sometimes it's hard. Um, so like who wants to listen to me for 45 minutes about anything, but if we can talk back and forth and have some interaction, that's what made it fun. And then you hit it right on the head for me. Like, I absolutely love this is my third podcast this week, third interview this week, and I feel, talk about being selfish, I feel like I get more out of it than anybody else. I go away from the podcast feeling energized, I feel enthusiastic. I talk to someone like you and I go, man, it's really cool to know that we have so many similarities, and here's where he is and here's where I am, and wow, this is just such a great experience. I love talking with people. I love hearing their stories. I love learning about your mom and your dad and your school and growing up in Montana, like learning about the person too, right? Because everybody can read your book. That doesn't mean that they know who you are. They know some of your thoughts, but they don't know you. And so through the podcast, you really actually get to meet and learn about the person, which I think is just so amazing. So again, thank you for the book, but thank you for the time more than anything, because time is so valuable. And I know your time is valuable. And everybody watching here, guys, once again, any questions, please get ready to drop those in there because we're going to wrap up in just a few minutes. But how did your podcast has had some great success. I mean, I've looked at your numbers, and being a new younger ish podcaster, how did you grow that following, and were there some stumbling blocks along the way with that as well?
Oh, big time, brother. Let me give credit to where credit's due, and that is to my team. I have her name is Nisha, and then there's Two Market Media. They're both doing such a fantastic job of getting it out. But it's interesting, man, and I don't know if you got caught up with this, but I looked at the numbers, like how many reviews, how many downloads, and I started that in the beginning, and then I realized that's all ego, man. It's like the truth is what you said. I get fired up after every episode, typically when I'm hosting even more because it has become this really selfish endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why am I getting caught up in something? Hopefully somebody likes it, but I know that there's a ton of value being put out there. And
Mm-hmm.
so once I let go of all that, it's amazing how it just started to really blossom. And it was interesting. I was on a flight from, I think it was New York to Florida. And this guy turns to me, he goes, "Hey, you're JM." And I was like, "Yeah, man, how's it going?" He's like, "Oh, I just heard your podcast with so and so." And I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." Because I don't think about it. Like this guy lives somewhere in, like, it was Buffalo, but he was flying out of LaGuardia. I'm not sure why, but he had listened to the podcast. And so my point is the reach is getting there. And
Uh-huh.
I'm not concerned about it at all because I know we're putting out value just like you're doing, brother. and it just continues to grow. And hopefully your audience does a great job, like mine has, to just say, you know what, I see value in this, share it.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure if you ask them to do it. I'm doing it for you, brother, because you're a great host. You ask really insightful questions, and it deserves to be shared, brother. You're doing a great job, and you're putting a lot of time into it. And like you said, that's your most valuable asset. So it'll grow as you've seen. But for sure, I got caught up in what are my numbers? How are the
Hmm.
downloads?
Hmm.
I don't worry about it anymore. I just do it, man, and I get so much from it.
Well, I have to admit that the ego is still not quite in check because I do check my numbers. I'm checking subscribers and stuff like that. I think it's just a measurement to kind of find out, like, am I moving the needle a little bit, right? Because, when I first started, people would ask me, like, what's your purpose? Why are you doing this? Why aren't you advertising, or this or that? And I said, honestly, this this is truly a passion project. I don't get paid to do this. I don't. It doesn't help my business. This is a personal passion project that I love. I've got, maybe 130 videos so far, people that I've interviewed. Each and every single one of them is unique in their own way. Everybody has a great story, and that's going to be there, forever. So, looking big picture and looking 5 years down the line, I mean, wow, to look back then, that'd be super cool. I'm about 2 years in, but having a blast. I mean, just absolutely loving this. I don't see stopping. Um, I haven't added any audio. See, so everything I do is all video. It's all YouTube and social media platforms, but I haven't even hit the Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. That's in the works for 2023, and maybe we get some more listens that way. But you're right. It's about telling the story. I mean, I can't wait for everybody to watch this and be like, dude, you got to talk to him. You got to hear his story. I mean, he wrote this book. Like, I read that book. I mean, it's. I just think it's super cool that we get to have this conversation. So let's kind of wrap this up with just your final thoughts, and as far as what's next for you. What are you looking forward to in 2023? What goals have you set for yourself?
Yeah, brother. So, to the chagrin of my wife, I'm writing book number 3. And you know what, man? I'm having such a good time doing it, because it truly is, it's growth for myself, right? It's like a supercharged journaling session for 6 months to a year.
Hmm.
So 2023, that's a big part of it. Uh, Continuing to be more on stages, because again, that pandemic, as cool as it was to do what we're doing, I love being in front of people in terms of just feeling that energy and
Hmm.
connecting with more human beings. So more of that is definitely happening. My wife actually just called me today, and I'll just shameless plug for her nonprofit, Let's Go Give, excuse me. And she just called me. She's like, we're going to dinner at one of the biggest athletes that's ever lived on this planet on Friday. She just called me, and she's like, we're going to dinner with them and their wife, and there's like 4 other people.
Hmm.
And I was like, baby, how come? And she's like, through the donations of Let's Go Give. So, we're just going to keep pushing love out there. And it's fun, man. I truly I feel so blessed. 2022, it wasn't an easy year. I lost my dad, had a business partner steal a few $1 million. My shoulder's supposed to be replaced. Like, it's been a mess. But you know what? All of those things I can say I'm grateful for, because my dad provided me perspective. My business partner provided me, again, perspective. And my shoulder, look, I'm really healthy in most regards. And all that playing really hard, it maybe caught up to me, but I'm still able to move it. I'm still going. So it's going to be an amazing year, just like 2022. And there's going to be some fun. There's going to be some hardships. And I'm looking forward to it, brother, because I'm above ground and really blessed to be meeting people like yourself.
Well, your energy is definitely contagious. I feel, I get some goosebumps when you start talking about, ramping up the new year and just goals and moving forward. But you also recognize the struggles. I mean, they're there. I mean, I don't care how good things are in your life. There's struggles there, and people are going through struggles we don't know anything about. We don't know anything about, and for you to continue to put the light out there and to share the love and share the inspiration. I love that and I love that more people are going to get to see it through this video, and I just can't wait to see what you do next. I've really enjoyed reading your book. Look forward to reading the next one. Love your podcast and just the things that you speak about. So thanks for being on the show today and taking your time to be with me and share everything that you did.
Jason, it is truly my pleasure, my brother. I thank you for having me. You do an amazing job, and just keep doing it, man. You are bringing a ton of value, so I just appreciate you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And guys, listen, we'll be back up next Monday with our next guest. Just tune in every Monday, and I'll be filling in on some Wednesdays as well with a lot more guests. Appreciate you guys watching. As JM said, help us out. Give us a share the video, share the podcast, let everybody know about it and check it out. And JM, if you hang out for about 60 seconds, I'll be right back. But thank you again. All right, guys, we out. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.